How long has Hollywood been doing the transgender thing? That was my question. I'm going to put some of my fashion skills to the test. We're going to start with the 20s and 30s where they shaved off their eyebrows and penciled them back on. And that was one way that they used to disguise the male brow ridge. You could shave them off, draw them high or a bit low. And they weren't doing too much plastic surgery back then, so they had to work with light and shadow. One way that they could do it is put on all that white makeup and then draw a line above the male jaw and then shadow in under it to give the illusion of a female jaw. The clothing was straight and pretty much shapeless, and that would disguise the male body in the industry. You have to wonder why these fashions become trends. It's because the transgenders in the industry need to hide what they are. Bette Davis has no female hips at all. Clara Bow, I think, possibly was a transgendered individual and had the eyebrows drawn very close to the eyes to make the face look smaller. Greta Garbo was definitely a man. And Marlene Dietrich as well, because I'm seeing the large skull of a man and the large jaw of a man, and he used to wear lots of male clothes, and that was really controversial at the time. Lana Turner's looking the same, pretty similar, large bone structure, and you don't see it because they've presented them at different angles and they work with that light and shadow. It's only illusion. So from this angle, this could look like female curvature, but you can tell that the photographer has crouched down and is looking up at her. And it's the same as Marilyn Monroe. That's a tiny little man bum, but you can see the angle that the photographer is at is crouched on the ground, and from here it would look like female curvature, but it's just the angle. We've got Lana Turner with broad shoulders, straight legs, and the shorts that flare out at the sides, and we go forward in time with Cara Delevingne wearing the same thing because she doesn't have female hips. The 50s, they let the eyebrows grow back. That would disguise the brow ridge again, and they wore red lipstick so that your eye would go straight to the lips because they started using color. The fashion then became high-waisted trousers and skirts and dresses that would pull your waistline in, which gives anybody an hourglass figure. I don't know why people thought that Jane Russell was a girl. This person's huge, and the only thing they could do is take a belt and pull that waist in, but there's still no hope for that. The fashion was pulling the waist in, and it said to give you an hourglass figure. No, it was to give the trannies in the industry an hourglass figure. Audrey Hepburn was a boy, small boy anyway, nipping the waist in, giving that an hourglass figure, but that is 3 head widths on Audrey's shoulders. It was also the fashion to have the scoop neckline, which made the shoulders look a lot smaller. You can see on Marilyn Monroe, you can see on Audrey Hepburn, made the shoulders look a lot smaller. I have looked at pictures of women, I've seen women in real life, and we don't have this clavicle that is just crawling out of the neck like this. This is a distinctly male feature. Adam's apple, for those of you who were not sure. We've got 2 drag queens. Jane Russell's such a huge person that the only thing they could do is change the fashion to like try and cut up those male proportions, but it's still a large person, you can see. Towards the end of the 50s, starting in the 60s, they wore these gloves, and that was to give the illusion that you were looking at the short forearm of a woman. Your eye goes to the top of the shoulder and ends at the beginning of the glove, but those gloves covered up those very long forearms of men. The 60s fashion had these boots, and why that became a thing is because the transgender men in the industry needed to hide those skinny little calves, and this was one way that they did it. They also had this dolly makeup, and what they would do is draw a line inside the eye socket, as you can see here on Audrey, and it covers up that deep set eye that men have. So they did this and said, well, it makes your eye look deeper. Well, yes, because men have deep set eyes, most of them, because of their skull, and we don't, so they just had to work with what they had. The fashion in the 60s was all sorts. It was ethnic and all over the place, or it was psychedelic and all over the place, and you just didn't know where to look. You were so inundated by all these bright colors and overwhelmed with these bright clashing fabrics that it just overloaded your brain and you didn't know where to look, so then you wouldn't notice the male features that they had. The 1970s had bell bottoms and big hair. If you were wearing bell bottoms, you would immediately look at the flare, you wouldn't look at the small male hips. and the large hair that Farrah Fawcett had, you wouldn't be looking too much at the face or anything else. The makeup was bright and it went all the way up to the brow ridge, which would disguise the brow ridge. They also had a habit of wearing chokers or scarves or some sorts of ethnic jewelry around their throats that would hide a tracheal shave that didn't take, or maybe one that grew back. The clothes seemed to be either the big and romantic thing, or it was all over the place, but it was still clashing patterns. The 80s had these awful shoulder pads, and this had come about from Joan Collins, who wore these huge shoulder pads because men have huge shoulders anyway, and it would disguise that. And if everybody else is wearing shoulder pads, then you just don't notice. The 80s hairbands had a lot to do with disguising. It was crimped hair, big hair, Madonna hair, with lots of jewelry and bangles and things like that. The clothes kind of had a bit of a layer to it. And there was also a bit of goth during that time as well. The colours were neon and bright and they clashed. You didn't want to look at them for too long. And this was another technique that they used. The leg warmers that the fonder exercise woman did, that would cover up the male calves, which is probably why she wore them. The noughties fashion was kind of odd. It was like lots of jeans, and it was a mixture between grunge and something else. Like, I don't know, maybe the people in the industry were like, we don't know what to do right now, so just cover it all up until we figure out something else. And again, they used this clashing patterns with tartans and flower prints, and it was like this Kurt Cobain sort of fashion. So the girls wore lots of layers, and the layers had different fabrics and patterns put together. They also had these jeans that were really high up on the waist, and that was so that the men in the industry could hide the male waist. There seemed to be some sort of revival as well, where they were putting different eras into their clothing, and they shaved the eyebrows off again and drew them back on because it worked in the past, so they're going to do it again. It hides the brow ridge. You know, it's a man's world, isn't it? They're still telling us what to wear, only now they're dressing up like women and having surgery to look like women, but they're still telling us what to wear. The 2000s had this handkerchief top, because when your eye looks at it, it does make you think that there's female curvature. It's not. It's another illusion. These people are masters of illusion. They've done this for a long time now. Any shape in a triangle would automatically give curves on the other side. Put some clothes on, Paris. They also had this corset top that became popular because, as in the 50s, it would pull the waist in. So corsets, bustiers, waist cinchers gives anybody an hourglass figure. Your eye doesn't notice, and you go from the breasts to the waist to the hips coming out, and you immediately think hourglass figure. This top here is doing two things. One, it's covering up the trachea, and two, it's making the shoulder look a lot smaller. So this curve that we have here, it stops right in her shoulder joint, and it makes you think that it's smaller because black makes anybody look smaller. And this is what I was talking about in Scooby-Doo. People don't have their clothing tailored for them any longer, but what they've done is put the seam really far on Matthew's shoulders, and it's to make the shoulders appear broader than they are. But that seam is too far for that person's shoulders, and they should be a bit more here, which would be correct. Now we've gone to present day, and we are back with the thick eyebrows. I'm not knocking anybody that's got these thick eyebrows, but just think about why we have these fashion trends coming. People follow trends, they don't think anything about it. The eyebrows now that are kind of drawn on and a bit block shaped, that covers up the brow ridge, doesn't it? Now we've gone back to a sort of 70s revival with this cut out sides thing, and that gives another illusion, optical illusion, that this is female curvature. We have Ariana Grande giving us the Baphomet with those two fingers. This is a small boy. It's either cut out in a triangle or it's cut out in a curve. And if you think that it's not true, then why do they all have this dress? Like, every person in the industry now has this dress. Halle Berry doesn't even need to put her hand on the hips, because this dress makes you think that she does have an hourglass figure of a woman. She doesn't, because you see those arms just flop straight to the side. Another dress with the sides cut out and wearing a moon bump, which I think is very brazen, but you know, the people in the industry, they assume that we're stupid and that we don't know. There's another top giving us the illusion that the shoulders are smaller than what they are. You can see that it does have one shoulder and it comes in a curve, and when your eye sees that, you just immediately think small shoulders. There's another dress that she's wearing, but you can still see that her shoulders are wider than her hips. So this is only an illusion. And if you look at this picture, this is a man. Just let that sink in. This is a man wearing this clothing. Like, that doesn't look good on anybody. Oh, and Mr. Kushner has a female Q angle. His tranny wife on the side is gargantuan. Another illusion. Your eye goes straight to the breasts. You see that it comes in at the waist and then it comes out at the hips, and you automatically think female curvature hourglass. The back of the dress gives the illusion that her pelvis is tilting forward as a woman does. It does not. Everybody in the industry wearing this dress. You have Laura Dern, who's far too large. Laura Dern wearing a similar strange looking dress. It does not do anything for those shoulders. And another dress doing the same thing. Mila Jovovich giving us a taste of the 70s with this thing. And white always gives the illusion of making you look bigger. Black makes you look smaller. Optical illusions. Nicole Ricci wearing a dress, giving us that fake curve again. Dress has curves, body does not, because look at her back. That's her back. There's no female tilt in the back. There's no pelvic tilt at all. This is not a woman. Oh, this is prostitute clothing. In my opinion, this is what, you know, why are they all wearing it? They're prostitutes, and nobody wears, like, who wears this kind of clothing? Them, just the trannies in the industry. And we have a dress like Aquafina's wearing that gives the illusion of curves, you know. This is a ladyboy. I went to Thailand. I saw ladyboys. They look like this. Shakira giving us another dress. Dress has curves, body does not. It comes at the top where the breasts are, goes in, comes out at the hips. Repeat offender giving us the Baphomet symbol. That's not her flesh on the side, that's the colour of the dress. And we've got Taylor Swift doing the same thing. They say she's statuesque. She's like 5'11". But tranny-esque, because this is a boy. And I'm angry that they've been lying to me all these years. And it's not a good image to put out for anybody. It's not even a good image to put for transgendered anyway, because they're telling you that you have to be anorexic and skinny in order to be liked and beautiful, and that's bollocks. And I'm angry that they've been lying to me this whole time and telling me what to wear. I don't want to look like that. I'm never going to look like that because I don't have a man's body. Like, just look at this and be empowered that you don't have to do what Hollywood is telling you to do anymore. Like, stop telling me what to do. Yeah, I know what you are now.